I think one of the things that's really interesting about the movement that you've started is not just the like confidence in women that have taking pauses and coming back, but also the corporate policy of this too is a whole other side of the conversation.
We've been conditioned to think about time off for caregiving as mind numbing, when in reality, don't discount that incredible experience they'd already accrued before stepping into parenthood. It didn't evaporate. And what they did was they layered on a set of non-traditional experience, right? They grew probably more deeply in terms of perspective and leadership skill in this sort of like non-traditional backdrop of caregiving.
Welcome back to Making It with Jess Ekstrom, where we tell the real stories behind going for it. Today's guest is a speaker, an author, and the founder of a movement that is redefining what it means to be an ambitious woman. Neha Ruch was at the height of her career, fresh out of Stanford Business School and landing dream jobs when she became pregnant with her first child. In the era of lean in and girl boss culture, she did something that many saw as radical. She chose to downshift. But Neha quickly realized that taking a break from the traditional workforce didn't mean she was losing her ambition. It meant she was entering a new creative season of life. In this episode, we talk about why motherhood often threatens the identity pillars of high-achieving women and how to navigate the messy middle between being a full-time professional and a full-time parent. Neha shares the story behind her best-selling book, The Power Pause, and why she's on a mission to show that caregiving is a leadership lab, not a career killer. We also dive into her radical take on why presence with our children is measured by quality, not hours. So let's start at the beginning with a New Year's Day baby and the realization that all I need to be is myself. So take me back to the beginning. Like, you're pregnant and you're a highly ambitious woman. What was this how did this whole movement start?
So I was pregnant and had Bodhi on New Year's Day of 2016. So imagine that the backdrop of that moment was the lean in movement, the girl boss era,
Yes.
right? There was a lot of pink and suits, and that was just, there was this movement of like, we have done it.
Yep.
And I had graduated Stanford Business School maybe 2 years before that. I'd landed what on paper was my dream job. I think if I were being honest with myself, I was up a lot, worried about politics within the workplace. And then I had him. And I felt so at peace for the first time in so long.
Interesting.
Now, that doesn't mean I had like mastitis several times. I was up at odd hours.
Of course.
But I would sit there reaching the ends of the internet at 3 o'clock in the morning and think all I need to be is myself.
Yeah.
And this kid loves me for it.
For that.
And that felt really freeing. And I think I just wanted to rest into that feeling. And equally, I was really interested in like a year of life. What does that mean to shape a little baby's year of life? Like, how do they sleep? How do you get them eating? And so I think I was suddenly curious about something again. Like, motherhood can be actually really interesting.
And really a creative season.
And creative.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling that way in my work. So I say all of that to say, I didn't choose to downshift my work because I thought it was better for my son. I really did it because it was better for me, and I wanted that, and I was interested in it. And
did you have scarcity fear of like, what will this mean? Momentum, like all the things that go through my head when I think like that. Yeah.
So I'll tell you that at that moment, I felt so clear and confident, except think you've spent your entire life looking for like at least I had. Someone saying like, you're doing really great.
Right.
Like you are, like you just got a salary. Like I look back sometimes and it's like gives me so much cringe. Like emails circulating to my friends in my 20s talking about my work as if it was like the most important thing, right? Like, but you know, so when I started to say that I was going to downshift first to part-time work, eventually pause, I started hearing everything from, but aren't you going to be bored all day? To, are you giving up? did you waste, that's like, why do you even bother going to business school? I mean, I really heard a full spectrum, and it didn't come from a malintended place. It came from people just making sense of this decision. And I bring that up because I actually think my bigger conflict was not, am I going to lose something? But how can I exist when so many people no longer see me as relevant, ambitious, interesting? Like, I just felt like I was suddenly counted out.
Yep. I think motherhood threatens all of the identity pillars of high achieving women. You know, the how productive we can be, how spontaneous we can be, how fit we can be. And I think like I'm so curious like about you, because I feel like I had the complete opposite experience when I had my daughter, where I had like more confusion than clarity. And I definitely had postpartum depression, which I got help with, thank God. So some of it's chemical, but also it was like an identity. I wouldn't call it a crisis, but like a shift where I finally one day had this revelation where I was like, I am comparing this new life to my old life. And if I do that, I'm going to be miserable. I think like the only clarity that I have around that moment of motherhood was like, if I compare this life to my old life, I'm going to be miserable. But if I equate this as like the clock is at zero, totally new chapter, it is magnificent. And it was like, I'm getting emotional, but it was like, I used to feel like I lived my life between like a 3 and a 7 on like the joy and pain scale, and motherhood was a 1, but also a 10. Like more joy than I've ever experienced, but also more pain than I've ever experienced. And so I feel like I didn't have the like grounding clarity that you had, but it made me more awake than I've ever been before.
Everyone finds something once they get past the initial, I think I'm so glad you said like it wasn't a crisis, it was a shift. I think it's just like an evolution, right? We changed from age 5 to 15. We changed from 15 to 25. Like we are naturally going to keep changing. And yes, I think motherhood is like one of the most colossal changes, because you are now responsible for another life. And that
physically
naturally
and mentally.
Changes your physicality, changes your bandwidth. And I think that I felt very ready to let go of things. And because I think a lot of identity evolution is you get to choose, like a lot goes with you. Like a lot of it, who I am gets to go with me, right? If you leave the workforce for a chapter, you get to decide like, yes, I ran brand at a tech startup, but like, that didn't belong to my job. It belonged to me, like the creativity, the interest factor belonged to me. And the kindness of who I am existed pre-motherhood, and I wanted to take it with me. But some of the other elements that I was ready to shed, I think motherhood challenges you to shed, because you become so much more limited in terms of your time. And
your priorities are
your priorities.
Sharper.
And so I think that was what I was excited about. I was excited to see how that sort of perspective, because I think I felt that.
And then you did a blog post.
Well, so what happened was, I was telling you, so I sort of navigated this weird, like, in-between moment where I was holding, because I don't want to gloss over that what people were saying was really impacting me, right? Like, it was really making me think like, well, I feel pretty good about this. Like, I actually see a world where this is opening me up. But everyone else thinks I'm like bored all day. And my friends from business school think I'm in some way giving up. I felt it, and I was making sense of it. And the best thing that happened was I started going to these baby movement classes. And it was in this like linoleum floored attic of Babies R Us at Union Square. And I walked in one day, and there was a woman who had worked at HSBC for years and had been traveling to, and she was like, this is actually my first day at home. I was like, used to be on a flight to Hong Kong every month. And I can't do that with a child anymore. And I'm like, it's weird, but I'm okay. Like I'm actually excited about this. And then I met another woman at that same class that day who had just gotten laid off from Scoop. And she was like, I think I'm going to just enjoy this as a blessing for right now. And I'm going to see if I can like consider freelance. None of them matched the stereotypes that we were being handed, right? Yeah. And so when I was looking around, I felt like, oh, well, that's the woman. I saw myself, my own ambition, my own experience, my own interest, my own capacity to grow reflected back in these women around me, right? Yeah. And that's the magic of community of mothers, because they reflect back to you like the parts of yourself that you want to see in your new version. And so I realized, wait a second, all the women and people who have something to say about this, it's not their fault. They've just inherited sort of one version of success right now in this girl boss moment. And everyone who's choosing differently is getting left behind and left out of the content. Right. So I really wanted to start a space about a new look at ambitious women who were making room for family life for a chapter and show us as a much more dynamic collective. And so I started it as a project to heal really myself and my own confidence, and hopefully the confidence of many others. But I started very small, profiling women I was meeting who represented that sense of ambition, but equally were leaning in to family.
And now the Power Pause is a best-selling book. You have a community now.
We do.
A membership.
We do.
Yeah.
To bring to life what I benefited so greatly from. Yeah. Which was sort of, I think that a lot of the book and the movement is for women, is what I needed back then. Someone to hold my hand and say, you are still ambitious. Yeah. You're still feminist. Here's the language you need to tell your husband to F off when he says that it's a luxury to be at home. He actually said that. I feel so bad. I bring it up all the time. He is a wonderful partner. And one time he happened to say, well, it's a luxury to be at home. And I was like, well, it's a luxury for you to get to go to work all day.
And to go to the bathroom without anyone trying to follow you in there.
And and never have to think about like, oh, well, who's going to be at home if I book that flight to San Francisco. Right. And it took that sort of education and lived experience. Like each chapter of that book is grounded in having to rethink for myself and rewrite for myself, well, what is ambition? What is feminism right now? What is financial dignity? How can I feel successful? And anyways, and then I had the privilege of also surrounding myself with women, both based on my work and my neighborhood, and sort of a natural inclination to collect women who represented similar stories and then could buoy me with a sense of confidence and also be soundboards for, well, how are you making flex work work? How are you thinking about returning down the line? How are you negotiating part-time help to work on that creative project? And I wanted to bring that to life in a way that could continue this movement through women's experiences. So the membership is now a virtual way of women to invest in their ongoing growth during a professional pause or downshift.
One of the things that you said that really struck me was there's a lot of talk about girl bosses and trad wives, but the truth is that most modern mothers live somewhere in between, less extreme, less black and white, and far more fluid. And I think we want to have this everyone wants clarity around who they are and their role and like this box that we're in. I'm either at home or I'm working. I'm either here or I'm there. And your answer to this is like, no, like there's fluidity in all of this, whether that means fractional or whether that means a pause but on an end. How do you help what do you say to someone who's maybe navigating that in between and not feeling like they belong anywhere? I experience that where sometimes I think like, could I be better at this if I just picked one instead of tried to do both? Yeah.
That's the blessing and burden of the in-between, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly choosing, right? Like, am I going to spend more time on work or am I going to spend more time on childcare? And it changes like hour to hour, day to day.
Minute by minute. Yeah.
And I think that and sometimes sort of the black and white ideas of stay at home and worked for so long because they kept people in sort of a binary. But the reality is I never take for granted the ability to shift on a dime when something really matters.
Yeah.
Right. And I wish more families had that. You know, I think about fluidity, and I would say to the woman in between that you are playing the long game.
Mm-hmm.
Like we think about things often and what's happening right now. This is how it's always going to be. The reality is it changes over and over again. I think the trickiest part was when I had kids your age, probably.
Mm-hmm. So tell me it gets better.
Well, it changes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do think that by nature of them being in school,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and having a full day outside of me,
Mm-hmm.
so I can then pour that day into my own pursuits. It kind of creates some of that structure that I think when you're in the messy middle, you don't have as much. And I think back then I remember feeling like I had something I cared so deeply about because I started this alongside family life. And there's a great sort of irony in starting the first platform about ambitious women on career pauses and downshifts while you're on a career pause and downshift because you kind of have to set expectations of what's possible in both.
Yeah.
So, you know, what helped me was to say, this is what success is going to look like for me for this year. Mm-hmm. It's going to be 3 blog posts a week. It's going to be going to 1 event and 5 Instagram posts, 1 event a month, right? Like I knew what I could do and I accepted what I couldn't, even though it would tug at me sometimes, right? Like, because I'd be sitting there thinking, I know this work is important. Mm-hmm. And if I just had more time, it could be bigger. Mm-hmm. But I think I inherently knew and can say now with certainty that the time that I was sort of in it with my kids was shaping the work I was doing.
Yeah.
It would be very strange for me to have written a book about career if I'd never had that experience. I won't say that tension between I wish I could do more didn't exist sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think allowing myself very clear expectations of what do I want professionally and what do I want personally.
Yeah.
And then trusting that, okay, I'm going to come back and revisit this year over year over year. Mm-hmm. And I would say that I'm glad I played the long game because when my kids aged into school, it was 20, 21, 22, and it was just post-pandemic. And culture was finally ready for this message. I think if I'd tried any earlier, it wouldn't have worked. Like, I think when the pandemic happened and the world had to re-examine what does work and family actually look like, right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly you couldn't hide your kids.
Mm-hmm.
People were ready for new messaging.
What would you say to women who can't take the pause that they want to and feel like they are not doing enough? Like they want to be home, they want to take the pause, but they have to work. How can you not be your own punching bag in this? Because I see so many women that would love to take the time, but life is hard. Life is expensive. Maybe they're a single mom, or maybe it's a 2-income household that used to be a luxury that is now a necessity. You talk about this in the Power Pause, but what would you say to some of those listeners?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think first I would lead with, please go read the Harvard Business Review research paper called How Our Careers Impact Our Children, because the bottom line is 0. Whether you work out of the home or in the home or exist in between, your children are across, they studied a number of children, a number of families. The outcomes around health and happiness and competence were unmoved besides one variable, which was presence, measured not in terms of hours, but in how happily and engaged you showed up in your time with your child.
That in itself is
healing.
Yeah. I just literally felt something sewn in me that when you said that.
Well, because I can tell you now, I have worked part-time. I have, for other people, I've been fully at home. I've been fully at home with a side project and had help. Yeah. I have worked part-time for myself, and I've worked full-time. I was gone for when I was doing book launch season.
Yeah.
And my children were A-okay. Not only okay, but thrived in each of those seasons because we were fully transparent about what life was going to look like and
yeah.
how much they were still the center of my world, no matter what. And that is all that matters.
And did you think it was like, we have kind of a parenting philosophy, me and my husband, where I want my kids to see me trying.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched my parents like renovate our upstairs bathroom, turn it into their office of their company they started that they eventually exited. And it was really cool to have a front row seat to watching someone go for it. And I think that is a choice that we're also making, that I want them to see me trying and to be able to talk to them about it, and not just the good, but like, oh yeah, you know, mommy didn't get something that she really wanted.
Yes.
How important is like you were saying, the transparency of it in those moments?
Well, I think, you know, it's funny because I get that question on both sides. I get that question from women who are working out of the home and women who are at home saying, I want my children to think of me as ambitious. And I worry they don't know that I was like a kick-ass lawyer, you know, a year ago. And I always say you get to shape your conversations with your child. We used to do rose and thorn with our children at the end of each day, which is your rose is the best part of your day. Your thorn is the tricky part, and bud is something you're looking forward to. Now we do 2 truths and a lie because my kids are older, and that's like much more fun for them.
That's so funny.
But it's a way to connect at the end of the day, and you get to choose and be intentional about what you choose to share with them. And you're right. Like I often choose things that like they can learn that not everything is smooth sailing.
Not everything works out.
And when I was fully, you know, on pause, I would talk about volunteering. I would talk about writing a blog. But I would talk about my interests. Now I talk about playing mahjong. Like I just want them to know that I'm whole and I'm healthy and that I have an identity, you know, because then they say, who do you play mahjong with? And I talk about my friends and which friends. And then they realize like I'm a whole and healthy human. And that is what I want them to see. I don't really care if they think of me as like a stay-at-home or working parent. In fact, I just don't even want them to know that language one day. I just want them to think of me as like a whole and happy mother who loved them very much and worked on things I cared about. But, you know, I think bringing that storytelling about your life is a really powerful connection point to our kids.
You know, one of the things with this podcast series is like, I'm talking to women like you who have accomplished something amazing, who are paving the way. And from the outside looking in, it can seem flawless. And so was there a moment that, like, for people who are listening that are maybe like they tried to pitch a pilot that didn't get picked up, or they started their own community and no one showed up? Like, was there a moment where you were like, oh yeah, I don't know if this is going to work, and you really had to like dig in again?
Yeah. You know, one of the strange parts about having a book out into the world and having a book sort of in such a cultural moment of resonance where it's resonating is that people meet you in this context and don't know the sort of 9 or 10 years that came before it. When I started this, it was a Squarespace website with 3, I would do a link roundup, so 4 blog posts a week and 5 Instagram posts. And in the first 2 years, I was like, I launched 2017. In fall of 2018, even the end of 2018, I was like, this is going to work. Like I felt like, oh, I have a niche and I'm the only one talking about it. And this is working. And then I had my second child. And it was a much more humbling experience. We started this by talking about how that sort of immediate sort of sinking into peace that I had with my first child. I had a very different postpartum experience with my second. I had a lot more postpartum anxiety. I felt really destabilized by the logistics of 2 children. I didn't know how to give both all of me and fit this other thing in. So I found myself thinking, wow, I have to pause within a pause. Like I had this and so it was about like just keeping the lights on. And that was hard, right? Because I created something.
How you're wired.
I'd created something that I had like sort of given me this way of feeling creative and fulfilled alongside my son, and thinking that I was doing it. And then it came undone. And I thought, but I still want to keep this going. And I say that to the people who have something that they're just planting seeds around.
Mm-hmm.
If you care deeply about it, keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Like no one else is like, now you're not like, oh, well, in 2018, 2019, 2020, I noticed that you like really slowed down. Like you don't, in the grand scheme, I kept my finger on the pulse of it. I kept it like going probably at a much lower level. And then when I came out of the pandemic, I was like, wait a second, I've done this for long enough that I can step into a real sense of expertise. I've interviewed enough women. I've done it. And I remember having this energy and gusto around it. But going through the publishing process was so humbling by nature of I was figuring out how to step back into working again, right? Like, and there were definitely, there was a lot of pressure to, in the book industry to not just write the book, but grow the audience.
Oh, yeah.
And that felt tumultuous. Like it felt like real stress that I hadn't had in a long time.
And like chasing this approval from this other
which
thing.
I had just parted with,
yes.
which I wrote a whole book about. So that felt weird.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I'll tell you, this book, even putting it out into the world, I thought it was going to be a New York Times bestseller. I really believed this book deserved to be a New York Times bestseller. And it was a USA Today bestseller, and it was an Amazon bestseller, and I was like, did all the things. And it doesn't even really matter. I did what it was supposed to do, which was change headlines on stay-at-home motherhood. I felt this like, I still feel it sometimes, this like pit in my stomach of like, like it didn't, like, did it work? And I have to remind myself still, even after having done all this work, that like to rewrite the success metric around it, that I chose to do it based on like creating a movement. I didn't focus on the best, that, I couldn't have both. Like I made an active choice to focus on the community and movement. And I did all my marketing based on that. And behind, like in the like secret part of my brain that is still wired a certain way, I'd wanted something else. And I just didn't say it.
Yeah.
And when I didn't get it, I had to really do the work to come back to, but how could I was focused on this other thing.
And why did I start this? But it is so easy when the horse and the carrot's right there.
Right.
And I mean, and here's the funny part is that I thought it was.
Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have told me to stop talking about it. I wasn't even going to say it. They keep telling me to stop saying it.
I so appreciate it.
They keep telling me to stop saying it because I think a lot of people just based on sort of, I do think it made waves. And that's the immensity. Because for the same reason that I believed it deserved the New York, because it's, no one had said it before.
Yeah,
and
I really appreciate you saying that. I think keep talking about it because it's like everyone can relate to like, I can't remember what podcast, I think it was maybe Armchair Expert, when they were like, if you had gone back and told your like little kid self, like one day you're going to be making movies, the kid's not going to be like, what was the box office that opening weekend? The kid's just going to be like, holy cow, we're making movies. Like,
right.
If you're going to like be in the NBA, it's like, well, yeah, I'm in the NBA. Maybe I'm not Michael Jordan, but I'm still like here. And so if it's like little Neha was like, I'm going to write a book that's going to like change the way women think about work. She's not going to be like, but was it a New York Times bestseller?
And it's so interesting because you know how they always say, like, talk to yourself the way, like, and you're always like, okay, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But it's a bizarre experience.
Yeah.
To be able to hold to think that you have done so much growth.
Yeah.
And also know that we are always still working through a certain wiring.
Yep.
And it's just important to know. Yeah. And to know that that's what we're sort of up against, is that cultural context.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about the movement that you've started is not just the like confidence in women that have taking pauses and coming back, but also the like corporate policy of this too is a whole other side of the conversation. So Imagine that like someone who's in your community is coming back, like their kids are now in school, they're coming back from a pause, they're about to interview for a job. You get like 1 minute with the person that's about to interview them. What would you want that employer, that interviewer, to know about the strengths of a mother re-entering the workplace after a pause?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question because I literally talked to someone yesterday who told me that she had someone come interview and said, I had a power pause. She apparently said I was on a career break and then corrected her. And she was like, no, I was on a power pause.
I
loved it so much. But I think the reason she said that and what I would want that employer to know is that we've been conditioned to think about time off for caregiving as mind numbing, when in reality, this woman or man, don't discount that incredible experience they'd already accrued before stepping into parenthood. It didn't evaporate. And what they did was they layered on a set of non-traditional experience, right? They grew probably more deeply in terms of perspective and leadership skill in this sort of like non-traditional backdrop of caregiving in ways that you should ask them about and understand, because I'm sure they have examples of time management, efficiency, collaboration, and also there's this other side, which is how did they open up their interests and network in ways that we as a culture have discounted can happen in motherhood. You know, a big part of the book is sort of how do you navigate this time away from the traditional workforce strategically, because there is a way to, right? Our networks expand in Babies Are Us movement classes because of the nature of motherhood. But those women end up being our soundboards or our collaborators on small projects or ideas. And, you know, when I think about the ways in which we're able to creatively explore during career pauses, that's what I want the employer to ask is, you know, how did you keep learning or exploring during your time away? And because that person is likely going to say, 9 out of 10 women would be able to say, you know, I helmed the benefit at school. I actually took on being the accountant for the preschool co-op. I have been actually taking a class on motherhood studies in the or women's studies in the evenings. The amount of upscaling, freelance work, project work, volunteering work that is now available to women is the piece that I want to focus on, because we are really, when you think about the fluidity that we talked about earlier, and where we inherited this sort of like binary black and white stay at home and working, it's because of the 1970s, you know, we did all this great work to show the working mother, but we sort of left the women who are doing care work at home with apron strings with this like black and white image of June Cleaver. And we never updated the image to talk about digital technology, the freelance and flex work marketplace, the small business economy, the volunteering economy, the fact that most women are coming in with at least 8 to 10 years of work experience before motherhood, right? So we're just looking at such a different archetype, and that's the real education.
Yeah, I know that on my team I love hiring moms, because I'm like, if you can run a household, I know you can run this role. And I think that it's like, having employers understand the power that comes from moms who have had a power pause. But what would you say as we wrap to someone like me who might connect their self-worth to their productivity? And how would you explain to me that slowing down doesn't mean giving up?
I think success, our idea of success, has been handed to us for so long, and you have this once-in-a-lifetime chance to write your most authentic version of success. Because when you look back, you know, when someone's giving your eulogy, you want to make sure that it really represents the ways in which you spent your time on the things you cared most of all, because that's all we have is time. And I think the exercise I'd want everyone to do, write your ideal day in 5 years in great detail. Like, who are you spending time with? What are you spending time on? How do you feel in your body? How do you feel in your mind? What do your relationships feel like with your kids? The like culture in your home? Not because that's who you're going to be, but because it's going to reveal to you like what your real goals are, right? What is your, like, you might envision a really calm human being right? And a really solid, loving partnership with your husband and a more adventurous household. You might imagine professional success, but like it has a different form. The point is, it's not going to be who you're going to be, but it's going to reveal to you the truest version of success. And when you sort of open up the scope that way, I think it reminds you that in like slowing down or shifting to make room for those things is actually in alignment with your values, right? I think that's what ambition and success is not, it's making sure, getting really intentional to make sure that you're just moving in the direction of your values and knowing you can recalibrate over and over again.
So last question, what is your answer to that? What does making it look like for Neha?
If I can continue to surround myself with women during my workday and get to really spend time with words and giving women words and community and be home for pickup, I'll have made it. That's it.
Neha, thank you so much for being here. Everyone get the power pause. Where can people find you in the membership?
You can find me at Neha Ruch on Instagram or access all the free resources on thepowerpause.com. And if you do want to invest in the membership, you can go to thepowerpause.com/membership.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Making It with Jess Ekstrom. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a review if you're enjoying it. See you next time.